I still remember the sound of the rain that night. Heavy, cold, relentless. The kind of rain that makes the world shrink, like everything is pressing in. Daniel came home early from his business trip. His suitcase was damp, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just held up my phone, opened the messages I thought I'd deleted. "Your boss," he said quietly. 2 words, and something inside me broke. I couldn't deny it. The truth was there, written in my own words, arrogant and careless. That night, Daniel packed a single bag and left. No drama, no threats, just silence. So absolute it lingered in every corner of the house for months. 8 years later, I still wake up sometimes, expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway. I've built a life since then, or something that looks like one. New city, new jobs, a new version of myself. Or at least I tried to be. But some ghosts aren't fooled by geography. I used to think I missed Daniel's love. What I really missed was the version of myself I was before I broke him. He looked at me once like I was calm after a storm. After the affair, I became the storm itself. 2 months ago, a friend sent me a photo of Daniel. Older, broader, a touch of silver in his hair, standing beside a woman outside a bookstore. She smiled at him in a way that made my chest tighten. There was peace in his face, the kind he never had with me at the end. That night, I poured a glass of wine and scrolled through old memories. Photos, messages, moments I'd thrown away for a thrill that disappeared within months. My affair wasn't about love. It was about validation. Greg, my boss, knew exactly what to say to someone who felt invisible. I told myself it was harmless, but I lost everything that truly mattered. I thought Daniel never remarried. Until last week, I was at a conference in Chicago near the hotel bar when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in nearly a decade. Calm, deep, unmistakable. I turned. There he was, Daniel, holding a drink, laughing with colleagues. My first instinct was to run. Instead, I froze. When he saw me, his laughter drained away. "Laura," he said. My name sounded strange coming from him. We stood there, caught between what was and what would never be again. I wanted to tell him everything I had rehearsed over the years. The apologies, the explanations, the self-inflicted punishments. But the words felt tiny compared to what I'd done. He didn't invite me to sit, but I did anyway. The silence between us was unbearable. Finally, I said, "You look good." "So, do you?" he replied. But his eyes said something else, maybe pity, maybe indifference. He told me he'd moved back to Boston, started his own architecture firm. When I asked if he was happy, he smiled softly. "Yeah, I am." Then she appeared, the woman from the bookstore photo. She touched his shoulder and asked if he was ready to go. He introduced her as Emily, his fiancée. My heart felt like glass grinding against itself. I smiled politely, shook her hand, and watched them leave. Before they disappeared, Daniel turned back. "Take care, Laura," he said. I didn't sleep that night. I remembered the man who once loved me beyond reason, and the woman I became, reckless, careless, blind. The next morning, I found myself outside the hotel cafe, clutching a coffee I didn't remember buying. My reflection looked composed, but inside I was trembling. 8 years of imagined apologies had led me here, and when I finally wrote to him, it wasn't to win him back, not to reopen wounds. Just words I couldn't carry any longer. "Daniel, I saw you today. You looked happy, truly happy. I know what I did was more than betrayal. It was cruelty wrapped in selfishness. I spent years blaming loneliness, stress, anything to make it easier to hold the truth. The truth is simple. I made you doubt your worth. I made love feel unsafe. I hope she gives you what I couldn't. I hope you never have to question her loyalty." I reread it a dozen times before sending. Then I turned off my phone, afraid of the silence that might follow. Days passed. On the 5th day, his reply came. "Laura, I don't hate you. I did for a long time, but hate eventually burns itself out. I'm not sure if forgiveness is the right word. Maybe understanding. We were different people then. Sometimes loving someone isn't enough when one of you is broken. I appreciate your message. Take care of yourself. No sparks. No tears. Just finality. and for the first time in years, I cried freely. I stayed an extra day in Chicago, walking aimlessly through the city. I thought about passion confused with meaning, validation confused with love. Greg, the man I'd risked everything for, was a name buried under HR reports and LinkedIn updates. I was the only one keeping a shrine to a mistake. By the river, I watched the light ripple across the water. Daniel was calm, happy, healed. For years, I imagined him haunted by me. He wasn't. And maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not words, not contact, but letting someone else's happiness exist without needing to be part of it. Back in my apartment, I deleted his email, not out of anger, but acceptance. Some stories aren't meant to be rewritten. They exist to remind you who you shouldn't become again. Months later, I heard Daniel and Emily married by the sea. I smiled. Real peace, no bitterness. Just a faint ache of knowing I once held that peace and let it slip away. I started therapy. I stopped erasing the woman I was and began understanding her. Loneliness isn't cured by attention. Guilt doesn't have to define you. Some people enter your life to show the weight of what you're capable of losing. Sometimes late at night, I think of him, the man who left quietly, and the man I saw years later, free. That memory doesn't hurt anymore. It reminds me that healing isn't always about being forgiven. Sometimes it's realizing you can't undo the past, only learn from it. If Daniel ever thinks of me, I hope it's not with anger. I hope he remembers that once, before everything went wrong, we were good. And if he doesn't remember me at all, that's okay too. The greatest consequence of betrayal isn't losing someone you love. It's becoming someone unrecognizable, and then spending the rest of your life finding your way back. And in that quiet return to myself, I finally did.